All right, we're live, everyone. Welcome to Political Head Trauma, where Head Trauma had a podcast. We've got oodles of guests today. We've got two congressional candidates, one from CD1 and one from CD2. And then also sitting to my left, we have a Senate candidate. And so we're going to be chatting them all up, finding out, what makes them tick and everything else. We're excited to chat with them. But first, we're going to have Carlton Bowen on. He is running for the Senate to take place of Romney, and pretty stiff competition in this Senate race this go around. A lot of people running. And Holly needs help while she plays with the...
Hey guys, welcome. Happy Friday. Happy Friday. I hope you all had a good week. We appreciate you tuning in to Political Head Trauma, where if Head Trauma had a podcast, it would sound something like this. Hamana.
Yeah. All right. So without further ado, we'll just get kicked right in and chat with Carlton. Carlton is running as American Independent.
Independent American.
Yeah, Independent American. Lean in a little closer to the mic.
Yep.
Carlton, explain that. Are you? Do you guys have an official party? I thought it was just Independent. Is that an actual name of the party?
It is an actual party. Yeah, the Independent American Party. It's a great group. They have a website, utahiap.org. They have 15 principles. Just really awesome principles that this party represents, and I'm honored and pleased to run with them.
Can I get that again so I can put it in our show notes?
Yeah, sure. It's utahiap.org. And my website, my personal website is carlton4ussenate.org. I'm sorry, .com.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up. We'll show it on the screen here in a minute.
Carlton, the number 4.
ussenate.com.
Excellent. USS.
Yes.
Senate. I gotcha.
But anyways, I know this is exciting. Carlton, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your decision to run.
Yeah, I'd love to. Well, first of all, thank you, Jared and Holly, for having me on the podcast. I respect what you're doing here. I think it's awesome.
Thank you.
And having candidates and different guests, I think, is great. People get to hear firsthand, which is always a great opportunity. My name is Carlton Bowen. I'm running for the U.S. Senate. I'm born and raised in Utah. Married my beautiful wife, Linda. We've been married 36 years.
Oh, wow. We should have a show about that. Secrets to a long marriage.
We have 6 amazing children and 13 awesome grandchildren, with more on the way.
6
Are any
kids.
of them not amazing or awesome? You can tell us.
They're all great. Yep, they're all exceptional.
That's exciting. Wow,
Yeah.
what a huge family. And do they all live in Utah?
No, my oldest daughter lives in Washington State. The rest of my family all lives in Utah.
Oh, is she still got those same core values you raised her with? Or has she been struggling a little bit in Washington State?
Great question. She's Eastern Washington, so it's more conservative there. And she's got a great family. She homeschools.
Awesome.
Yep. Her husband's work took him out there. They've been out there several years, but they're amazing.
That's great. Do we need to turn his volume on his mic up at all? Sounds a little quiet. I don't know. As we're waiting for our people to join,
No, I
just want to make sure the sound sounds
pretty
good.
Yeah, and I can keep going if you want.
Yeah, tell us.
Keep going.
Yeah.
Yes.
So after I was married, I joined the U.S. Air Force, served for about 6 years. Linda and I have lived in Texas, Virginia, and South Korea. And
Ulsan in South Korea.
Yeah, Ulsan Air Base. That's right. Yep.
Beautiful place.
Yep. We lived off base, but I served on base.
What made you join?
Love of country, opportunity.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Anyone in your family before you?
Well, probably, but not directly. Like, not not my father or uncles or anything. Well, actually, I did have an uncle that served in the Navy. But yeah.
That's awesome. I mean, you know, a lot of family members do it because someone in their family had joined. And it's neat to meet people who are the first. Like, you know, that I think that's pretty exceptional, especially in a time that you actually were probably serving during. It was right in the middle of some pretty crazy stuff happening in the world.
Yeah, so I served during the first Gulf War, Desert Shield, Desert Storm, Desert Strike.
We won that one.
Yeah.
We won, but it's sad what's going on with Iraq now aligned with Iran, which I think our whole goal was for that not to happen. So it's kind of tragic that way. But.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's almost like we took a win and did the unthinkable and made it a loss.
Yeah. Yep.
It's sad. But so tell us about your motivation to run. What is?
Yeah. Well, I love our country. I have been involved politically my entire life. I'm a Trump supporter. I want there to be a Trump supporter in the U.S. Senate. And frankly, I'm concerned the Republicans are going to select another establishment Republican type candidate, like a Mitt Romney type candidate. And I just don't think Utah can afford to have someone like that in that office.
I agree.
Break down to me how this the Utah Independent American Party, or is it American Independent?
It's Independent America.
Independent America Party, but you're a Trump supporter. Does that mean that? Is that a party platform, or is the Independent American Party? Is it kind of a loose party that's a big tent?
Are they putting up a presidential nominee, or are they nominating Trump themselves?
Yeah, so great questions. Let me answer those. First of all, there is a National Independent American Party. The Utah Independent American Party, I made a motion in our caucus to actually support Donald Trump as our presidential candidate, and that did pass.
Excellent.
And so, while Donald Trump won't be on the ballot, obviously as an independent American, because he's running as a Republican, the Utah Independent American Party has chosen to support him. There were other people that brought up other options, like Robert Kennedy and stuff like that. And we had some discussion about that. There are other people in the country, 2 or 3 people that filed to run for president as independent Americans. We just weren't able to get hold of them, get information from them. They didn't join our caucus, our convention. So we didn't really have anything to go on as far as supporting them as our candidate. And again, I just think it's important. I think President Trump has done amazing things. In Utah, he scaled back the Bears Ears Monument. Mm-hmm. He got us out of the Paris Climate Accord. He got us out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I mean, he ended Roe v. Wade. I mean, that's something my entire life that conservatives have been trying to accomplish.
He actually started peace in the Middle East, too.
Oh, yeah, the Abraham Accords.
And the Abraham Accords and his walk across the line in North Korea to stop the little pudgy guy from throwing missiles at South Korea.
Yeah, the missile testing stopped when President Trump was president.
That's wrapped around
tangled
you.
up there. That's
so
okay. Toss it up there.
But yeah, he had a lot of great foreign achievements and a lot of great domestic achievements. So he's a fighter. He's tried and true. And you see what going against the establishment has cost him.
Yeah.
I mean, he's not even president anymore, and they're still going after him hard politically. So anyway, your other questions, though, about the Independent American Party, they have great principles, but why am I running? So I have a platform of 3 things I'm running for, and I'm running because I love our country, obviously, and the other reasons I mentioned, but my platform is traditional values, traditional money, and our tradition of freedom. And traditional values, what does that mean, right? Well, I mean, it's kind of sad we even have to talk about it, but the times we live in, we do. Boys are boys. It's so basic and simple, right? But
you think so? Logic is lost now on people.
Boys are boys, girls are girls. There's only 2 genders. marriages between a man and a woman. Families matter a lot, and ideally have a mom and a dad married, trying and true. Don't steal, don't cheat, don't lie, don't kill. Integrity and honesty still matter. So it's traditional values. Traditional money means more than using the gold and silver coin that that our founders envisioned and that the U.S. Constitution requires. It also means a free market capitalistic economy, not communism, not socialism,
Not crony capitalism.
not crony capitalism. Yeah. And this system has proven the most prosperous over time. It's tried and true. I mean, it's what made America so prosperous for so long.
That and a very, very limited government.
Yes.
And also Europe destroying itself twice in 40 years. That tends to make
I
it so
think
we
the
don't have
crony
competitors.
capitalism has changed people's view of capitalism. They forget that those are two separate ways of doing business. One is the government's hands in and the power of corporations dictating to the government. The other is the consumer decides who and what will be successful, not the government.
Right.
And so I think people forget that those are two separate entities altogether.
Oh, that's a great point, Holly. I mean, really, the role of government is just have a set of rules that's fair, whether you're small or big. But with crony capitalism, you have government putting their thumb on the scale in favor of different, groups or businesses, too big to fail, the bailout of GM and of the big insurance AIG and, all this stuff. And that's not free market capitalism. The government choosing favorites is not free market capitalism. The role of the government really should just be limited to having a set of rules that treat all businesses equally and fairly.
Yeah, I know the government just chimed in on a deal that was going on with two people. I want to say AT&T and someone else, but not letting them conjoin. One wanted to buy the other, and the government stepped in, the SEC, and said, no, you can't do that. You'll make yourself a monopoly. Well, that's fine and good until it's a Facebook or it's a X or it's these big, huge companies.
It depends on who
Google, for
who
example.
who donates the most. That's the big
And
decider.
sometimes, like with DirecTV, remember when they were all under the hammer, bad. All of a sudden, they donate $100,000+ to one of the people's campaign. I think it was Biden's. Next thing you know, not only are you getting this contract that we were denying, but now you get to open up in all these other countries we had denied prior. So it's so blatantly corrupt right now.
Right. And corruption is the key word. It's only when you have corruption that these, that people are tipping the scale for one business or another because they have a vested interest, they're getting a kickback or these types of things. And it's not right. It's not who we are, who we should be.
It's not legal for you.
It's not legal, yeah. But it really comes down to this, moral decay in our society. Where are we at morally as a country? So when you have a moral country, you have a lot less corruption. You can detect it. You can root it out. Unfortunately, we live in a time, and I think Trump's presidency actually revealed this, that the corruption is deep and widespread. Speaking of traditional money,
are you in the gold back? I was going to ask you.
Yeah, I wanted to show these.
There we go. Yeah, we've had a couple
you don't
of
have
gold
to pay
back.
us to come on the show.
Oh no,
we've had a couple of gold back guys on, and
wow.
And I'm going to switch back. Everyone, his website.
Wait, did you say this is a gift?
Yeah, you can have that.
This is $1.
It's worth about $5. It's 1/1000th troy ounce of gold.
This is gold.
Yeah, this is
and 24 karat.
And
amazing.
And it's Utah. This is the gold back. Anyways,
New
everyone,
Hampshire.
It's Carlton #4 USSenate.com. We're gonna jump back. So
how do you buy these? Do you have to go to their website? I mean, do people use these as currency?
I mean, you can go to goldback.com. You can.
Okay, so
I'm happy to give you.
Yeah, give us a quick rundown on that. But then I want to get back to.
This is amazing.
Get back to your run, everyone. This is what they look like. This is it's a gold leaf. It's like a plastic with gold leafed onto it. They're very beautiful.
Yeah, sturdy.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you've seen the larger denominations.
I've seen a couple of them.
Those are 1 gold backs, but like here's a 10, here's a 5.
And they.
Can you say they're worth more than they're actually printed.
Yeah. Well, they
Well,
get
so is the
larger
penny,
because they
right?
add more gold to them. Is that correct?
Yeah, the larger denominations have larger amounts of gold, but it's consistent. So
I see.
you know, 1 gold back, 5 gold backs, it's 5 times more gold in a 5 gold back than there is in a 1 gold back.
Okay.
So it's a precise amount of gold. In fact, it's this
Okay,
new
this
technology.
one's Utah. This one's Utah. This one says New Hampshire.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
sorry,
the
I was
gold-
out of ones for Utah, so I gave you a New Hampshire one, Holly. Sorry about
Thank
that.
you. No, this is one of the best gifts I've ever gotten. Gold. Thank you.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Well, it's a movement across the nation. There's quite a few states that are making these.
Yeah, they're doing additional prints like for other states. Right now there's 5 states. I think there's probably 5 more they're getting ready to release. It's just a great group, Alpine Gold and
Mhm.
Goldback. It's a local Utah company, but they're doing great things and just really appreciate what they're doing.
Will
Yeah.
companies accept it eventually?
So on the goldback.com site, there's a list of companies that are willing to accept goldbacks. And
Not that I would spend it. I'd want to save it for scary times.
Well, and you can't. A lot of people like to buy physical gold as storage, money storage, but
how do you trade that?
when it's not just how do you trade it, but one a chunk
That's
of
so
gold,
cool.
a chunk of gold the size of a pinky nail is, what is it right now, $70?
yeah,
Yeah, I know the one that I purchased years back was $60, and it is tiny and so easy to lose. And it's still $60, where something like this is a gold storage that's $5, and it's not as easy to lose. And then if you do lose it, you're only losing $5 versus $60-$70.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people buy silver, little silver chits, because silver's not as hazardous if you lose one, but also it's bigger, easier to visually see. I mean, if I pulled out my little gold chit, you guys go, really? That's it? And it was $60.
yeah.
And it is tiny.
Right. The reason traditional money is important to me, referring to gold and silver coins. So the U.S. Mint does, mint gold and silver eagles, which in Utah are considered currency, and actually to the U.S. government is also considered currency. They have a face value printed on the front. Of course, a bank won't give you what they're actually worth, so we need to fix that. That's one of the things I would like to do if elected. But it's with the whole money situation, though, you get to root cause. Why can the government afford, endless wars, sending all this money to rebuild all these other nations, or to try to build them, or try to control them, or whatever it is, right? And it's just war after war. And it's because they have kind of this endless funding, at least they think they do, because there's no accountability, because they can just print more. And same even with the immigrant situation, like how can the government afford to, put up all these, hundreds of thousands of immigrants in hotels and pay their medical bills and all this stuff? Well, it's just because they can print endless money. There's no accountability. They don't have to actually go to taxpayers and say, we need money to pay for this. They can just kick the can down the road.
I have a question on that, because this is something that I do circles. Our government, we know they print money to come up with money. Why do they borrow any money then?
That's kind of how they get it from the Federal Reserve System
That
into
was
the economy.
That was the argument that was had with that Fed chief, 2 weeks ago, that everyone's been
nothing
dogging him about. Well, okay, I'm going to tell you why.
But he didn't even know. And he's the advisor to the president.
He does know. He didn't want to say. Because
he was having
his
a brain
cadre
battle.
of friends make money when an order is put in. Instead of the government making money come into existence so they pay their bills and then it circulates as it's supposed to be, they go to a third party to make the money, and that third party gets to make money off the interest on that. Well,
it's ridiculous.
While he's in there, he probably gets assistance from those third parties. And then when he's not in there, he's a part of that third party. It's a big scam, just like our legal system is, where it's meant to prop up lawyers.
there's definitely lots of issues and problems.
Well, what's happening to Trump right now is kangaroo court. And I'm appalled at any Democrat, independent, Republican who's not watching this and going, what is happening here?
Yeah.
This is insane. This is happening to an ex-president. Imagine what could happen to any of us.
Well, and it even happens here in Utah. We have a couple political prisoners, Ken Cromar, the guy that was the capitalist, the free market capitalist guy, and they threw him in jail because he criticized the Utah Department of Commerce. You have the J6ers, obviously, they were just exercising their right to protest.
Go back to this Cromer guy. I don't want to take away from your platform. I would like to hear more about him.
I think it's all in part of your platform, because you're asking for us to go back to a moral people, which the Constitution doesn't survive without a moral people.
That's right.
And without a fair justice system, which is part of that Constitution.
Right.
And here you're saying that there is a political prisoner in Utah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. More than one.
So really? What did he come?
Well, so Ken, they went after him for tax evasion and stuff like that. I knew Ken. He's from Cedar Hills, good guy, great family. They're saying he, made all these millions of dollars. He was a video producer. He did almost like volunteer movies. Like he would go out and interview, like the Triple Deuce Artillery Squadron from Utah, and then put it together. Like he put together a movie called Miracles. And, just a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. It's not like this guy was making a bunch of money.
Documentary?
Documentary type thing. And then, but they went after him for his house. I think he actually ended up being vindicated on the IRS charge. But then the people that before he was vindicated, there was a lot of really bad stuff, actually, with, SWAT, and they basically sold his house, even though he was later vindicated. And he was never really able to get a fair shake from what I can tell,
Well, dealing with the government, you never do. You never do. The government, one, you can't sue them when they're wrong.
Well, two,
you can't go for, there's a family in Washington. I watched John Stossel on this, where the EPA came in and just declared a part of this land they bought to build a house on as wetlands. It's not. They got ruled in the Supreme Court that it wasn't. These people are out $400,000. They're out 8 years of their life. They're old. That was their retirement home they were building. And they can't get any recourse. Honestly, those people in the EPA that came and pulled that stuff should die behind bars.
There's a lot of injustice in our country, that's for sure. I do have some concrete proposals for how we can address some of those.
That's what I want to get into. Let's talk about, I wanted to dig into this, but first let's go to that, and then we'll dig into what's on your website.
Okay. Well, for example, there's this guy in Arkansas that was an airport executive, and he was into guns. And so he would do private sales. The ATF was like, oh, this guy's, doing too many private sales. He should have
6 a.m. raid. We need a lot of shields.
Yeah, you've covered this. Okay.
Yes.
And so, but I'm thinking, why do we have an ATF? I mean, alcohol's regulated at the state level. Mm-hmm. Tobacco's regulated at the state level. Firearms aren't supposed to be regulated, especially by the federal government.
Yeah,
the Second Amendment.
I think San Francisco needs people to clean up poo on the streets, and the ATF sounds like a good position for that.
And we could call it was part of the ATF.
We could call that anti.
I'm with you. They could be joined with the FBI, and the FBI could be dispersed across the United States.
And then we make the FBI the people who drives the poo to the dump.
Then we put FBI, dissolve them into local sheriff's departments, where they are a wing of each sheriff's department and they work for an elected. That's what I think they should do with the FBI and ATF. But please go on.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. And I mean, no, there's a lot of good people in the FBI. I'm sure in the ATF too.
Sure. I'm sure there's one or two good people. On Thursdays, they're good. I'm sure they're great when they drop their.
Finish.
No, you're great. It's your show.
When they drop their kids off at the school, they're probably polite and don't want to stomp on people's rights.
Yeah. Well, you have a great point. It's just a hard situation because
it is.
What has happened is these government agencies have gotten out of control. Like in the case of Ryan in Arkansas, why did they need to do a pre-dawn raid?
Absolutely. Why do they ever need to do a no-knock warrant on these?
They shouldn't have done a no-knock warrant, and no-knock warrants in themselves are another huge problem, as is, frankly, like seizure of assets, like, at the
Asset
airport and
forfeiture.
stuff. Yeah, asset forfeiture. Like, these are huge problems. They can be addressed, but if elected, I like Rand Paul's out of the Fed bill. I like some of Mike Lee's bills. These bills that would roll back the rulemaking authority of these agencies without Congress basically putting their stamp of approval on it, because the Constitution sets up Congress, not these
are bureaucrats
with lawmaking authority.
Not one of them's elected.
That's
they
right.
don't answer to someone elected.
Yeah,
the person they answer to is appointed.
Exactly. So a lot of these problems we see with government and these out of control agencies, it's just that our government has grown so big and so far beyond what was intended, and there's not really control to bring it back. So we do need to start getting rid of some of these agencies like the ATF. We do need to start pulling that control back to Congress, where the Constitution puts it. Doesn't mean that we can't make laws. It just means they need to be according to the Constitution, and they need to be passed by Congress.
Wow, that's just so much common sense and logic, and actually the law of the land, that I'm appalled that we even have to bring it up, because we are that corrupt right now.
Yeah, but let's get back to our tradition of freedom, Holly, if that's okay.
Yes.
Because
how do you, as a senator, how do you move the nation in that direction?
Well, you can lead by example.
Pull that mic in. This is important.
You can lead by example. And we all try to do our best. So it's not like that alone is enough. But I think it has to be the first step of getting people into the government. There's basically two schools of thought, right? You either work in the system or you work outside of the system. Some people think the system's too far gone to work within it. I personally don't believe that. We as a nation have been through a lot, right? The Civil War, lots of things. But we do need to be moral. The biggest thing, to solve these problems is to be moral as a people. And that starts in our individual lives. It starts in our families. It starts in our cities, our counties, our states.
At the most local level.
At the most local level. And people might dismiss that, but that's where it's at. That's the solution, is just to get back to where we were. Our Tradition of Freedom platform, the Pilgrims came here in 1620. They were basically fleeing religious persecution in Europe. You had to belong to the state-sponsored churches in Europe, which is why there was a prohibition. It wasn't that we weren't supposed to have any, discussion of God in public. That's not what was meant at all. It was meant that the government couldn't establish a church like they did in England and all these other European countries where they had the Church of England or the Catholic Church. My wife's family's from Austria. They joined the LDS Church, way early on. They were some of the first members in Austria, but they were basically shunned because all their communities were Catholic. The government sponsored the Catholic Church, that type of thing. So when we say that the Pilgrims were fleeing religious persecution, they literally would, get ears torn off or, different things that mutilated them or harmed them or killed them.
They would starve. Merchants wouldn't do business with them. People refused to even take care of their children if there was a problem.
Yeah, so they came here seeking religious freedom, and what a great blessing that they did. They came here. We have a country based on this principle of religious freedom. It's so important. It's the First Amendment. I think it's first for a reason.
Right.
And then people don't realize all the miracles that happened for us to become a country, the country that we are. You had the Jamestown settlers in 1607, both in Jamestown and in Plymouth in 1620. They almost perished. And they kind of started out with these communal ideas that didn't help them. And it was only after they jettisoned those and kind of embraced private property and people benefiting from their work that they actually took root and started to prosper. But it was a long time between 1607 or 1620 and 1776 when we actually declared independence. And then it's not like we were immediately free, right? We had to fight a war for 5 years, and there were so many miracles during that war. Let me just share one of them. At the end of the war, at Yorktown, Virginia. So the British are surrounded by the Americans and the French, who were our allies. And the British have ships of reinforcement, multiple ships of troops to reinforce the British. A huge storm comes up and just lasts for days and days, which prevents these British reinforcements from landing, leads to Cornwallis's surrender on the battlefields of Yorktown, Virginia. And finally, we win our independence.
And our soldiers were able to cross those rivers quietly under the fog and never be seen. And, you know, Chris Stewart wrote a book called The Seven Miracles, and he was our congressman before he stepped down. And he says there's more than 7, but there were so many tiny miracles no one can explain.
Right.
No one could have predicted that it was do or die. And like George Washington said, okay, go. The fog is down. These soldiers were able to get their boat slowly across and totally go around the British ships. And they never knew they'd even left. And by the time the fog lifted, they went to attack and there was no one left to attack. And they couldn't believe it. And that was just one. There were many, many, many.
Yeah, Washington's crossing of the Delaware is definitely a miraculous story going into New York. Anyway, that's where we got to get back to. If we want to remain a free and prosperous nation, our national motto is "In God We Trust," and indeed we must if we're going to remain free and prosperous.
We should add that to the money. And indeed we must. True.
I would argue we need to have a total upset of our education system if we want to get back to that.
Absolutely.
Our education system is our number one enemy on that.
Well,
it is. It's our prosperity. It's destroying our prosperity, which is our children.
It's poisoning our children against those ideals.
Yeah, and we have self-government. It just makes no sense to me why these school boards, I mean, for a lot of years, the government handpicked who the candidates could be. You had like almost Soviet-style elections where you can choose A or B that the governor picked. We finally got rid of that. So now anyone can be voted on these school boards, but they're still dominated by these far left interests that, you know, allow these, you know, pornographic materials and these insane curriculums, you know, new math and everything else. Like they don't even teach cursive anymore. It goes on and on. You read what they teach about American history and they vilify our founding fathers. I mean,
and that's a lot of it is the school unions and the colleges who are putting out teachers with already this type of mentality. It's happening in upper education, and that upper education decides who gets to be teachers in our elementary education. And the really good conservative teachers probably have to lie on tests and everything else just to get their degree.
Oh yeah, the Johnson guy in Utah though is trying to take back to the curriculum. He made a good point. It's not like it can happen overnight, you know. But we've got to take back control of our schools, the teaching of our children. We've got to become more involved in what they're being taught, like, and then vote to make changes. We got to be more vocal, more involved.
Why hasn't the state taken notice of how many families have decided to go to homeschool? If that right there doesn't give you an idea, a slap in your face as a government to say, wait a minute, all these families are taking time out of their lives. Many women are staying home with their children to teach their own kids. We must be doing something wrong. Why? And they're losing money for every kid that leaves that school and goes into homeschooling. And we fought to have vote vouchers for homeschooling parents.
The government as a whole doesn't lose money and neither does the school district, because every year they still up your taxes, not once.
The school they still get money based on students in seats.
The school might lose that money.
Yeah, they do.
But the school district does not. The school district, when was the last time your property taxes went down?
Never.
Your property appointment to the school.
But what I'm saying is they know that kids are leaving in mass exodus. Now they're paying vouchers to parents who are homeschooling.
Probably
so they're still paying that.
Probably at a tenth of what they steal from you.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a mixed edge with the vouchers. I mean, I support school choice, and you know, and you're right. There's the per pupil expenditure. We spend a lot on education. Do we get the results?
No,
I mean,
we don't.
But with a voucher, for example, which hasn't passed in Utah from what I understand, except for disabled kids.
Well, homeschooling kids are getting financial assistance.
They get a voucher. I think it's what is it, $8,000
I
a
think
year?
8 or 11, 8 something.
But the risk is that whenever you get government funding, they can attach strings.
Absolutely.
You know, and so I always thought a tax credit was a better way if you were going to let people keep their own money, maybe even make it so it can carry over year to year. You know, if you don't use your tax credit, maybe even do tax credits for like contributing to a scholarship fund. So like if grandparents want to contribute to a scholarship fund for, you know, for their kids or for whoever, allow a tax credit for that. So, I mean, there's a lot that can be done, but the bottom line is we've got to take back control of our education. It has to be friendly to our values as a nation, to our values as parents and families. I mean, that's what education is supposed to be. It's supposed to pass on the values, you know, one generation to the next. And
at the very most, I would want it to reflect the values of our state, of our counties, of our cities, because why does it have to be a national footprint? Why aren't we as states deciding how and what values to teach our kids? Why do we need a Department of Education? That's ridiculous to me. They'll spend money on Ukraine to help support Ukraine, but they haven't protected our schools, both protected them or improved them. Our state spent $6 billion on education and then touted in the same breath, this was 2 governors ago, that we had a 11% graduation go up rate. Like we went up 11%. And I'm like, $6 billion for 11%? Why are you applauding that?
You could, you know what? I can give you 100%.
Yeah.
And I'll do it for half that.
And kids will come out not
I
reading
just need
and not
a decent
doing math
printer.
because they just do the very basics to survive to get out, and they're getting graduated. So it is a really, as a senator, I would hope that not only you would commit to auditing all of the federal departments, but getting prepared to write a law that says we don't need this. We don't need the federal education.
Oh, I'm all for getting rid
Department.
of the Department of Education. The what's incredible to me is the amount that they fund education, like for example in Utah, is tiny. It used to just be a couple percent. Maybe it's up to like 10%. The last I heard it was like 7%. But they exercise so much control over what we do. Like these school boards fall over backwards to get these federal funds. Like they'll jettison all kinds of things and do all kinds of things that make no sense. Like in Pleasant Grove High School, okay, they have these litter boxes for people that identify as a
Do they
furby.
really?
Pleasant Grove?
Yeah,
and you've seen
Utah
them?
County, Utah. Well,
I mean, because I've heard about them in Davis County, but I've never actually seen a proof of it. Now, this is the same school board that gets 75% of our property tax on top of whatever federal dollars they're asking for.
I want to interview the janitor.
It was janitors that came out in Davis that said, we are not cleaning litter boxes.
Yeah, that's who I want to interview.
So Pleasant Grove has them.
They have had in the past. I assume they still do.
Oh.
And it's like, why are we embracing just absolute insanity to get a few bucks from the federal government that aren't even constitutionally authorized? The Constitution doesn't authorize a role for the federal government in education. We're supposed to be like the federal government is supposed to be defense and diplomacy.
So basically. What are they asking for from the federal government? Oh, we have cats now that we're teaching. We need more money.
It's probably under the new
to buy
Title
litter
IX.
boxes.
Title IX got changed 3 weeks ago in the dark of night. They changed it to Obama changed it and made it to where due process was stripped out of schools. And then Biden changed it to where
did they add gender?
Yes, they added the
absolute insanity.
The blending of, transgenders being allowed on sports, or you lose federal funding. Now, those are probably going to mostly hit colleges, but there's no reason that won't bleed down to your high schools.
Well, and when do we start standing up and trying something different?
Thank you. It's called insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. And that's what I've said to every single school board person running for this office. What are you going to do differently? Because what they're doing doesn't work.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do with others? You got to get others on board with you to come along and get out of this ideology, because we are placating to mental illness. And that is a problem. We cannot tell our kids who have a mental illness that, and I'm a religious person, so for me, God doesn't make mistakes. If you don't like the body you're in, we need to figure it out. You wouldn't take an anorexic to a doctor and say, she thinks she's fat. Can you take a couple limbs off so she'll lose some weight? You wouldn't do that. That is a mental illness that needs to be addressed. And that person needs lots of attention and counseling to get used to being in the body they're in, whatever weight they are. But that, again, it's a body dysmorphic disorder. And transgenderism fell right into that same disorder 5-6 years ago.
Well, I think there's a lot of, frankly, child abuse that happens by government officials, by these school officials. Like when they're promoting, a student that has transgender concerns, they're not notifying parents.
Yeah.
I don't know if this is happening in Utah, probably, but I know it's happening in other states where they don't notify parents. They're counseling them, basically advising them to maybe do gender, transition surgery or whatever. Basically, that's child abuse to me.
They're grooming them. Here, I'll keep a change of clothes for you so you can change when you get to school and be a boy. We'll call you by a boy's name. We won't tell your parents. And meanwhile, the parents, like he's always said, the parents have the gun to their head to pay that kid's insurance, to make sure that kid is in school, to clothe them, to feed them, to take care of them. And the state comes in and goes, oh, but we'll handle your child. The child belongs to us because your child thinks they have a different body.
Any damage done in our care will be paid by you.
But I'm serious.
Totally.
We have to start going after these people for child abuse. They're violating state laws in how they're treating children, what they're trying to do to children. Same with, like they talk about the drag story hour and stuff like that. Well, is that a sexually oriented business? And is that child abuse? On the immigration front, you basically have these non-governmental organizations that are conspiring to break our law. They're systematically conspiring to break our law. We should be going after that.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's that's human trafficking. Why are we not shutting those organizations down?
Because they're undocumented Democrats. That's why.
Well, and some of it's even government funded, like U.S. government funded, but that's okay. Go after those bureaucrats in the U.S. government who are also conspiring with these human traffickers, with the drug cartels. We have to start enforcing the laws that we have. In so many cases, it's not that we need new laws.
Right.
We just need to apply and enforce the ones that we have. And so often the courage to do that is lacking. I was on the American Fork City Council. When people would go to the meetings, I'd get a lot of positive feedback, but a lot of the people on the council, they didn't like all the questions I asked. It's like, well, why not? We're supposed to ask questions about what we're spending money on and what we're doing. So a lot of times I was kind of a lone voice on some of these things, but the people that were in the meetings, so often they'd come up after and just say, I really appreciated what you're saying, what you're doing. I share this just as it's an example. I have the courage to vote my conscience, which is important if you're going to be in the U.S. Senate. You have to be willing to stand up for your beliefs, for your values, for what you believe in.
Well, the senator you're trying to be partners with, Mike Lee, he has stood alone on many, many votes, maybe Rand Paul, maybe Ted Cruz, but he's one of the most famous senators in the country for that reason. And a lot doesn't get done because he can't get the backing from other senators. Now, you said something that was interesting. You want to vote your conscience. I appreciated that until I heard it come out of Mitt Romney's mouth. And he said it about Trump being indicted. What was he? Impeached.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, I have the right to vote my conscience. On that case, you don't. You're a jurist. You are supposed to vote based on the evidence presented, not on how you feel about the person. So when you say you want to vote your conscience, a lot of that, I know what you're saying. You want to stick to your values and stand alone if you are standing alone. But I think you won't be. I think a lot of people are trying to elect senators, Congress people who are willing now to upset the apple cart. And in this case, upsetting the apple cart, folks, is as simple as going back to the traditions and the Constitution and logic. And it's sad, but it's true.
Yeah, we've really got to get back to the basics of our country because
Really?
they're pretty neglected.
So you have served the country in the military, and then you became a city council member. And I know you've entered a few races and didn't win.
Yeah.
Which, so did Lincoln. And I love that you keep going. I mean, it's that important to you. I think that's incredible.
Thank you. I mean, I'll be on the ballot. It's up to voters whether they vote or not. I'll be on the November ballot, and that means I have a chance. People say, well, as a third party, do you have a chance? It's like, well, my name's on the ballot.
Right.
People can vote for it.
Remember, Lincoln was technically a third party candidate.
Yep. And lost twice prior.
You know, you mentioned Romney, and like we've had so many instances where we think we've elected like a more conservative House or whatever with the Tea Party movement, for example.
Yeah.
But then we get betrayed by our leadership. And it's the same thing in Utah. Like we have this establishment Republican mentality in Utah too. It's killing us. It's killing our state. And you see that like our state is way more liberal than you would think it would be. And so like,
well, I would argue that, not to offend, I'm not a Republican, so I can argue this, that the party in Utah is more protectionist than liberal. I wish that we understood what the word liberal means as it comes from Locke, but our
classical liberals. Good.
yes, that's what I am. But the Republican Party seems to be protectionist. We have a lot of Republicans that go into our state Senate and sign in laws that shut down small businesses. And they do that over and over to protect contractors, large contractors and developers. And that's sadly what our state tends to do.
Well, the Republican name is what gets you the win in Utah. So
Bingo.
then he says protection. It's they're protecting the R while doing a lot of what the Democrats would do.
Yeah, but if you're a Democrat and you're in Utah, you're going to run as a Republican if you want to win.
Exactly.
Unless you're in the corridor. And then you're going to run as a Democrat, and you better be as hard left. A Democrat in the corridor, you need to have it would help if you carried a red book and had a goofy mushroom haircut.
Okay. What does that mean?
It's
A
Mao.
mushroom. Oh. What are you talking about? Sim Gill again? Because you know that gets my cockles up when you talk about Sim Gill.
Well, anyway, my campaign slogan is break the uniparty.
Brilliant.
We've got to do something different. Like
especially in DC.
We can't keep having like, a conservative House, but then that has this liberal House Speaker that sides with Democrats every single time. I mean, the Democrats, they get the squad, they get what like 6 like radical progressives in there, Omar, AOC, whoever. There's not that many of them, right? A handful. And Nancy Pelosi, as House Speaker, like bends over backwards to make sure that their ultra liberal leftist agenda gets, implemented basically. Definitely a big part of what the House did under her. And yet you get like a couple hundred Republicans elected, Tea Party, Freedom Caucus, like large numbers of House members that want to make change. And again and again and again, their leadership betrays
the
them.
American people got rid of Nancy Pelosi with their votes, got rid of her being the House Speaker, gave the majority to the Congress, to the Republicans. And you're absolutely right. Where our Freedom Caucus stands up, but they're ignored.
Yeah, I mean, it was Paul Ryan, it was John Blaine or whatever before.
Boehner. John Boehner.
And and now I was hopeful with Mike Johnson and stuff. And I guess maybe the jury's still out a little bit. But
I think it's that CIA vape mist-filled room that changes everybody's mind on what they say before they get there.
I mean, they did the CRs, the continuing resolutions that they said they wouldn't do. They,
Look at me. I didn't do it.
I didn't look at you. I
I
just shook my head because, look, personally promised. And I'm telling you, the CIA takes them in that vape mist-filled room and they show them the other angles of the Zapruder tape, and boom, they vote for the CIA every time. And the CIA was there in the destruction of everything we've got going on. They were there supporting the feminists to get women in the workforce so that they got your kids and extra tax dollars every time.
I mean, I think there's a role for foreign intelligence, but
Sure.
I don't think our foreign intelligence agency should be undermining our values or our country. Plus, let's talk about the Monroe Doctrine. We've had the CIA involvement in Central and South America for decades, and yet somehow all these Central and Latin American countries keep going openly communist.
Well,
Venezuela right now is openly communist.
And
Yeah.
then our country decides when and where to take out their leaders when they become too much of a dictator that we actually install in there. It's insane to me.
It's
Gaddafi, for example.
I would love foreign intelligence if foreign intelligence would do some foreign intelligencing. We had that whole big 2 airplanes flew into a couple buildings and hit the Pentagon. And you know what? That day, the CIA and the FBI should have been torn down because they failed us. They failed us in a big way that set us on economic ruin.
They're doing it right now. All of our flight protectors, what are they called?
Oh,
The air marshals?
The air marshals have been pulled to go to the border and help make sandwiches. And then you've got all the people protecting our buildings now pulled to go assist with the border. This is insane. It's like a disaster is waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And another 9/11 could happen like that. And it'll be our government's fault.
Here's the big question. I listened to a CIA or an FBI agent talk about this. An he was actually a part of the DC field office. And he says he's concerned that we're going to see stuff happen because they pulled all the FBI agents to go and make sure that Christians aren't terrorists. And he says we pulled out of where we should be watching instead of having a broad spectrum looking at every group, whether we've got a terrorist organizations here or building up or infiltrating or maybe it's Chinese soldiers coming across our southern border. They all got pulled to be watching Catholic churches at like the pre-Vatican II or things like that. And he says, I'm concerned as a retired FBI agent that we're missing actual threats.
And how many actual threats involve the FBI?
Oh, well,
We get into it, and the threat on
12 out of 18
on the governor
at Whitmer.
Whitmer, and
how many were
all
there
these
on
different
January
ones
6th?
that FBI is infiltrated into a lot of these threats, and they're probably getting people hyped up to commit them. I mean, when there are that many FBI involved in these little type of things, that comes from the top.
Yeah.
That type of stuff comes from the top. Those people are appointed. That's why I think FBI agents, they don't go into it to be scoundrels. They go into it because they want to fight freedom, and they want to be law enforcement officers. And hi, Mom. And they also want to be exceptional members of society. And then they get these orders or these rules set down on them. And I think that's why if you dissolve the FBI into local sheriff's departments all over the country where they answer to the sheriff, you wouldn't have these middle of the night no-knock warrants.
CSPOA, Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association, great group.
Awesome.
Good.
Yep.
And my dad was with the Fraternal Order of Police, which he
Awesome.
actually brought to Utah, which is exciting. I'm huge law enforcement, and it's Police Week right now, so I'm extra sensitive.
We got 7 minutes left. I know you've got to get out of here because you've got a birthday party to get to, and we don't want to keep you, but I really want to dig into the traditional money. Now you brought in an example of how
one of my favorite presents
have
I've
a
ever
traditional currency to the people. And I think when we walk you out, I'm going to point a camera over and set it on the table so that we can show them nice and big. And I do want to start advertising this stuff on the show.
Because if this could work, I mean, and if these guys want to be a part of the show,
even if you just want to store some money,
we'd be happy to advertise.
Even if you want to store some wealth, I should say, not money. If you want to store some wealth, it's an ideal way to do it because it's much more feasible than even buying those little silver chits.
Is there a bank that backs them?
Kind of. There's so Alpine Gold kind of does the exchange. They'll cash them back for paper money too, and you can create an account with UPMA. Let's talk afterwards because I could help you get set up with some things that I think you would really like.
We would love to advertise them. We'd love
into
to
this because it's actual spendable.
Yeah, and
at least I know how much it's worth.
And it's storable and it's beautiful. I mean, you frame it and hang it on the wall. But I want to go into, as a senator, you talked about supporting Audit the Fed. The great Dr. Ron Paul, Saint Paul, we should call him now. Is Saints higher than Doctor? I think
Rand
Saints
or Ron?
Ron.
Okay. So
Ron is the god Pauler. Anyways, he
Just
brought
done a
in.
just make that up.
Yeah,
That's
I did.
great.
It come out of right off the back of my face. Anyways, he started that audit the Fed, and he got shut down a lot. And there were a handful of senators that got on board, including Bernie Sanders, believe it or not, got on board.
Yeah.
But what are some other steps that, as a senator, you would be able to take to try to reinforce us having money that doesn't inflate away from the people?
Yeah, well, I think a big one is I would like to introduce legislation that so the gold and silver coins that the U.S. Mint produces, they're stamped, they're backed by the U.S. government. They're basically currency. They're stamped with a face value. Like on a silver dollar, it's $1. On a gold eagle, it's $20.
Mhm.
So there's like a face value. But if you take it into the bank, and a gold eagle is basically 1 ounce of pure gold, 99.99% pure gold, guaranteed by the government. But they stamp a $20 face value on there. I would like to introduce legislation where if you go into a bank with that, they have to give you the actual value, not the $20, but the $2,500
The value of
that coin is actually worth.
Yeah.
And right now,
Or they better start cutting that coin
you
with a
can't-
lot of zinc.
You can't buy that coin for $20, can you?
2,500. Well,
If it's worth that much.
no, you can't buy it for $20. No, the face
Right.
value, no.
But here's $20. Give us the coin.
Yeah, exactly. And so there's a disconnect, and the laws are actually in place. Like the law says there has to be a silver dollar that's our currency. The law says that the government has to maintain parity between silver and gold as far as the exchange value. We just aren't following the laws that we have. But I think that would be a great way, though. A lot of people are interested in gold right now. Like Costco selling over $200 million worth of gold, just in their store, bullion that people are interested in.
China's buying every bit it can.
But I think that's like a lot of people think, oh, look at the spot market, what's gold going for, and then do a conversion to paper notes. And I say, no, let's do it the other way. Let's say, okay, we've got 20 gold dollars here. How much money has the Fed printed and pushed into the economy that has then inflated? That's why everything's more. That's why gas is more. That's why food's more, because we pushed all that money that we printed into the economy from all those COVID stipends.
That and at the same time shut down businesses.
Yeah.
So we restricted supply and increased demand and increased availability of currency. I mean, it was the dumbest moves we could have made. We ran headlong into a brick wall.
Yeah. That's just one example of something we could do. I know we have a very short amount of time, but some of the stuff we were talking about before, we have to realize that there's Gadiantons. Like we live in a time where there's actual people that want to destroy our country. Mm-hmm. They want to destroy our government. And so when we talk about the government, being corrupt or being bad or whatever, to me, it's not that the government is bad. We need government. It's a necessary evil, as the founding fathers said. Otherwise, you have anarchy and chaos. And we've seen that lately in some of our cities like Portland and Seattle.
But those guys want more government. I have a hard time with that argument because all those black mass little morons, they want more government.
Well, I'm not saying they don't want
They
more.
want ultimate government. They want Stalin in charge.
Ultimately, after anarchy comes tyranny. There's cycles, and you go through it. Well, after anarchy, that's what you
These
typically
people aren't
get.
educated to understand that. They don't know what they want until there's a government coming in and telling them what they can and can't do.
But my point is just we need to make a distinction between government being bad versus there being corrupt elements within our government that are using government for evil purposes. Fair. Our government, our framework is sound. The U.S. Constitution is sound. A lot of our laws, even still, are very sound. We're not enforcing them, but we need to identify and root out these corrupt elements that are abusing our government. They're, and some of these departments are just totally taken over or compromised, it seems, but they can be rooted out. And that's what we need to do to get back to where we need to be.
I agree with you. The Constitution is a near perfect document if it's implemented properly by people with a moral compass. And that's what we're losing. We're losing the morality of people. And that that document can't be enforced properly and isn't being enforced properly, except for whoever it works for. But there's so many laws that have recently been in place that violate our first, our fourth, our second. I mean, all these, and yet we're sitting here going, hey, you can't do this. What are you doing? This is against my constitutional rights. Well, how are you going to fight the government?
Right.
And how do you not go broke doing it? So I think you're doing the right thing, is you're trying to put your money where your mouth is. You're actually going to enter a race where you actually are one of 100 people that could actually affect change. And you're willing to. I mean, you're going to look at us and you're going to look out to our audience. And I'm sure the many other people you've met with, and you're going to make a promise that what you say here and what this website says is who you are and what you'll do if elected.
Right.
Because, we've all lost faith in those we've elected. I'm a Republican and I've lost faith in a lot of electeds because they change when they get there. And I don't know if they're threatened in that dark room by the CEA or CIA. I don't know if they all of a sudden get rich overnight and they like it. I don't know what happens to them, but I hope that good men and women who are willing to run for the seat will keep their promise and actually fix this.
Well, I could use help. If people are willing to put up yard signs, you can go to my site. At the bottom, it has a volunteer section. You can volunteer to put up a yard sign to host.
Do you want to share your screen so people can see? Also, guys, he has a donate button. Races like this are expensive. And I know that if you like what you've heard today and you want to talk to Carlton, I'm sure that you do town halls and things. Yep. Zoom via, please, reach out to me. Let me know when you're doing a town hall. We'll advertise it. If you do a Zoom town hall, we'll, I won't do it on our party pages, of course, but privately, I'm happy to assist you, at least get the word out. I think it's important that people get educated about their candidates before they go to the polls.
Absolutely.
And I love that you're supporting Donald Trump just because his policies helped a lot.
They helped
our community and our country a lot.
Tried and true. You never know what a second term will bring, but I'm hopeful. But I know what the first one brought.
Right, and you see what's happened. Just the mere thought of him running again. Now they're trying to put him in prison.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And under all these, old statutes and everything. At the top of his website is very interesting. I mean, it's a lot of great information to learn about him. We didn't even get into all of it. But right there at the top right is his donate button. If you've got $5, if you've got 10, if you've got more, every candidate needs your help. And every candidate, if you can't afford to donate, please offer to volunteer, put up a yard sign, get to know the candidate and maybe talk to your neighbors about him. For anyone that just can't vote for Biden or can't vote for whoever's running, you have options. I mean, there's always options. And to have an independent that you're basically, I mean, no offense if this isn't offensive to you, but you're basically talking about my party platform in its most basic sense. And it's sad that it's not as common sense for even Republicans who support the platform, who claim to. And yet you are talking about the very things that our platform believes in.
Right.
But you're doing it. And I see your little feet on your pin. What's the age of the feet?
10 weeks.
10 weeks. And so you're definitely pro-life. And I love that because every soul matters and every gift from God is a soul. And I think
absolutely
that's amazing. 10 weeks is how little toes, fingers, nose at 10 weeks in gestation.
It's not a clump of cells. It's a person.
Absolutely. I love it. We need to get you back on here.
Yeah.
When you have more time.
We're happy to give you as much traction as we can. So we'll have you back on before time to run.
If you do a town hall or something with your community, invite us.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'd love to do one out here in Tooele.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, and I can somewhat help you as far as putting you in touch with people. We want to make sure it's welcome. Do you have a list of folks?
She's the Republican chairperson, so she can do whatever you do. Don't call this number and schedule this thing.
Right. This place may or may not be available, but are you a member of the Chamber of Commerce or anything?
I'm not. You could wait until after the Republican primary to see if the Republican selected candidate in the convention is actually the Republican nominee or not. And then
that would be my hope.
And then that would be your hope and expectation, right? But if for some reason that's not the case, maybe as a Republican, it would be okay to support since the person that the Republicans actually selected, if that person's not the nominee, maybe it's okay to support someone else then.
Well, and we can do it from the basis of political head trauma because
Yeah.
I wear two hats. And for us, we could talk to our contacts and say, hey, could we borrow this building? As long as you have your contacts, you invite, we'll advertise for you on this channel. And I'm happy to even make phone calls and stuff to get people from our county out. At the very least, I want people to get to know who the people are on the ballot.
Awesome.
And I'm politically Gentile,
Yeah,
so
he's
I
the
can do
opposite
whatever
of
I
me.
want.
I'm political. He's the opposite. He's like, no, not having any party. You're not selling me on this. So
Yeah.
that's why we work.
That's great. Well, thank you so much for this.
Hey,
opportunity.
thank you. We'll be back in a minute. We're going to walk him out real quick.
That's Carlton Bowen, folks.
Yep.
And I'm just already impressed with this whole gold standard idea and the fact that the ability to spend actual gold could be something that'll keep our money worth something,
Mhm.
in which it's going far quickly.
Yep. And we'll be back in, I don't know, give us 2 minutes. Then we'll talk news until 4 p.m. when Paul Miller comes
And if you
on.
do a donation, make it monthly.
Monthly. Yeah, there you go. Keep it
That's
coming.
nice.
Keep it rolling. Everyone, this Carlton Bowen, go check out his website.
Anything
It's-
you want to say at the end?
yeah.
Just thank you.
You're very
Thanks for your
welcome.
time and your consideration.
Thank you
You're
for running.
very welcome. Yes.
It's not an easy feat.
We'll be right back.